Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
In between the blues, there are good days and bad days, with everything and nothing to lose. While the setting sun never sits, and the night has no limits. The void between freedom and free, dealing with the unnatural reality. A need to see, a need to be. Grass fire, my DNA needs THC.
Grass fire in a world that yearns. That's the way this fire burns. Like a grass fire.
In the unnatural society, been trying to maintain, while the sane appear to be clearly insane, with no way to explain. Outlasting the great lie, a sparking spark does my mind. Grass fire, pulling the sky, breathing in sativa's design.
Grass fire in a world that yearns. That's the way this fire burns. It's a grass fire.
The void between freedom and free, dealing with the unnatural reality. A need to see, a need to be. Grass fire, my DNA needs THC. Dreaming of long times past, all that those times brought. Looking to the heart of tomorrow. Grass fire in a world that yearns. That's the way this fire burns.
The country.
Federal drug marijuana laws are not based on science. It's intentional government ignorance, I think, put out there. And Dr. Lyle Craker from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst is involved in a long legal hassle. I finally got a decision allowing him to proceed with his research, but the Drug Enforcement Administration continues to stonewall the research.
We visited Professor Craker, the man at the center of this controversy. My name is Lyle Craker. I'm a professor at the Department of Plant and Soil Sciences in the University of Massachusetts. Our primary research and educational outreach is in medicinal plants. One of the key plants that we've been working with is black cohosh. Currently, this plant is collected in the Appalachian region and sold commercially as a dietary supplement for use by menopausal women to relieve the symptoms of menopause. 25 or 30% of the current medicines on the market are plants or plant-derived. I look at marijuana as no different than any other medicinal plant we've worked with. And what we want to do is to do the best thing for the public. And the best thing for the public is to do the research to see, to either prove yes or prove no that this plant material has beneficial health effects. To me, this is no different than anything else we've looked at, except that we're restricted. We can't look at it, and that's the big problem. I think that the point we're getting at is that we only learn about how plants can be used is if we do the scientific research that's necessary. And whether we're talking about black cohosh or we're talking about medical marijuana, we're talking about the same type of procedures that we scientifically need to do.
The first law governing marijuana required all farmers in the Virginia colony to actually grow hemp, the fiber produced by the marijuana plant. Hemp was valuable because you could use its fibers for rope and canvas, its seeds for soap and lamp oil. Most of the sails and ropes on colonial ships were made from hemp, as were many of the colonists' clothing, maps, and even Bibles. Both the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution were written on hemp parchment.
In 1850, marijuana is put in the U.S. Pharmacopoeia. Doctors are using and prescribing marijuana in the United States beginning in the 1850s. It is sold by the legitimate drug companies.
And marijuana policy remained that way for almost a century. Then along came Harry J. Anslinger. He earned his living chasing rum runners during Prohibition. He became commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics in 1930. At that time, it was becoming apparent that Prohibition was losing public support, and Anslinger shifted his focus from alcohol to marijuana. Anslinger utilized the press, whipping up public hysteria with exaggerated claims of the evils of the devil weed.
There's no doubt, I think, when you look at this history, that the enactment of marijuana prohibition, both at the state level and then at the national level, was not based on science at all. The story of Harry Anslinger's role in the prohibition of marijuana and the criminalization of marijuana users is a very interesting story. It's almost comical when you go back and you read some of the newspaper accounts and some of the rhetoric surrounding the prohibition of marijuana to see these incredibly exaggerated assertions, such as that marijuana would take normal people upon smoking it and make them assassins overnight, or that inevitably it would lead to insanity, in a larger sense, to debauchery and immorality.
Master. Wait, Master.
What Anslinger did is basically sort of assemble all these forces and kind of harness all this energy against marijuana as the assassin of youth and use it as the tool for promoting the adoption of the Uniform Narcotic Drug Act, and it worked.
A few years later, Anslinger would achieve his ultimate goal, the passage of the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937.
The Marijuana Tax Act was passed at the national level in 1937, and that the story about the prohibition of marijuana was basically a story emerging in the 1930s and largely driven by Harry Anslinger.
New immigrant populations were changing the face of American society, and alcohol prohibition had given rise to organized crime and increased violence. Anslinger played the race card and the fear card, as politicians so often have in America, and it worked.
50% of the violent crimes committed in districts occupied by Mexicans, Greeks, Turks, Filipinos, Spaniards, Latin Americans, and Negroes may be traced to the use of marijuana. I believe in some cases one cigarette might develop a homicidal mania, probably to kill his brother. If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face to face with the monster marijuana, he would drop dead of fright. Harry J. Anslinger.
To learn more and to obtain a free copy of the informational booklet, Marijuana, It's Time for a Conversation, please visit marijuanaconversation.org. During the hearings before Congress on the Marijuana Tax Act, the lone dissenting voice was Dr. William Woodward of the American Medical Association. Dr. Woodward pointed out that all of Anslinger's testimony was based on hearsay and exaggerated newspaper editorials, and that Congress had not been presented one single shred of actual evidence of marijuana's supposed dangers. Harry Anslinger remained head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics from 1930 until 1962.
Hello, Seattle! On this day, in this place of great beauty, we celebrate the beauty of nature, and I'm also here to celebrate the wondrous nature of you. The presence that we have here today binds us as a community. It empowers us. It strengthens us. We must become visible en masse if we're going to bring about the change that we want in the society. And when we do that, we extend our reach. We bring about new possibilities. And the creative spark that births action can usher in a new world. We have to say to America, open up, America. Show yourself. Time for mass action. This is why and how recent movements for freedom in Tunisia and Egypt gained momentum. This is how Gandhi cast off the British Empire. This is how America's suffragettes ended up getting for women the right to vote. This is how Dr. Martin Luther King's March on Washington became a pivotal moment in the civil rights history of this country. People become visible. They go to the streets. They linked arms. They marched. They sang, "We shall overcome." They walked the uplit path of social and economic justice. People have been on this path, and it's time for us to begin to walk that path too. People then marched to glory, but not for themselves, but for the benefit of generations to come. We gather here today in a common determination for change. A sense of commonality of purpose awakens. A purpose, a sense of awareness grows. The moment arrives to exercise a new commitment, to cast off an old order of things. This same awareness brought America's founders to write the Declaration of Independence and to proclaim a new order follows. Today it is not a financial deficit that will bring America down. It is a deficit of public action. When people discover what happens when one person determines to make a difference and then merges with the many like-minded and becomes visible, new possibilities unfold and a new order follows. Now, Seattle, you understand this, because in 1999, Seattle hosted the World Trade Organization rallies, and Seattle was the host of the Teamsters and the Turtles marching arm in arm, not too far from this area, demanding once and for all that we have enforceable workers' rights, human rights, environmental quality principles in all of our trade agreements. They marched and they chanted. And they said, not only we shall overcome, but solidarity forever, solidarity for workers. The Seattle WTO cast light upon the workings of the WTO. Seattleites, union members, trade activists helped spark a worldwide awareness, that workers had to have rights and that there had to be environmental quality principles. And it was the people of Seattle who identified that child labor, slave labor, and prison labor had to be in trade, that prohibitions on that had to be in trade agreements. Seattle brought that forward. You kept that alive. You've nurtured it. Large, intentional gatherings like this one can be a catalyst for powerful change. But we have to be prepared, as George Bernard Shaw once wrote, to dream things that never were and ask why not. And let us dream about the America that we want. Let us give our dreams some firmament. Let our dreams and our thoughts become words. Let the words become deeds. Let our deeds become action. Let our actions build a new America and a new world. Seattle, you shook the world once. Can you shake it again? I ask you. Are you ready here, Seattle, to declare once and for all that it's time for America to end the wars in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and Libya? Are you ready to do that? Are you prepared to demand that our troops be brought home? Are you prepared to demand that America end its worldwide military presence? Are you prepared to demand that America must lead the way to nuclear abolition? Are you prepared, Seattle, to demand that we have to repeal the Patriot Act? Are you prepared, Seattle, to demand that government spying, eavesdropping, and wiretapping of law-abiding citizens must end? That our sisters' right to privacy be protected and decisions about women's reproductive health be made between a woman and her doctor? Are you prepared, Seattle, to say that our brothers and sisters who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered have all full rights, including the right to marry? Are you prepared, Seattle, to demand the decriminalization and legalization of marijuana and demand hospitalization, not incarceration, for those with drug problems? Are you prepared to demand not-for-profit health care for all? Education for all? Retirement security for all? Jobs for all? Are you prepared to rescue our federal government from corporate interests by calling for a constitutional amendment which establishes only public financing of federal elections? Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared to summon the energy to rescue our planet, to protect our air, our water, and our land from further exploitation by demanding an end to drilling the earth, fracking the earth, cracking the earth, and an end to the poisoning of our seas and our skies, and to make sure that we end this carbon-based solution and bring forward a rapid transition to an environmentally friendly, socially responsible green economy? Seattle, this day, here and now, you, through your responses, have voiced what I would call the Seattle Declaration. Let the sound of your voice today be heard wide and far. Let your affirmations give birth to new actions, a new nation, and a new world. Let your voice once again cause America to march. Let your voice once again cause America to sing. Let your voice cause America to seek new freedoms. Let your voice call America to seek a newer world. Ours is a restless quest for freedom. We know wars make us less free. We know fear makes us less free. Social and economic insecurity makes us less free. If it is for freedom's sake that we gather, so then let us be for freedom's sake that we act courageously. Because it is our desire for change that carries extraordinary power to become more than we are, better than we are. Forged in the human heart, ignited by love and a passion for transformation, our common unity, our common purpose, and our common action can carry the power to change everything. This is the power of human unity. This is the power of our oneness. Feel it. Own it. Act upon it, Seattle. Thank you.
U.S. Congressman Dennis Kucinich, give a hand.
well, what is cannabis? Cannabis, of course, is a medicine.
I think it's important to say that no medication is going to work for everybody all the time.
It's a specific for migraines, it's a specific for seizures.
The take on the plant is that it's symbiotic with the human.
If you can get something that's natural, that has literally zero side effects.
It works as almost a ubiquitous inhibitor of a lot of systems in the brain.
The science is absolutely clear. The pharmaceuticalization of cannabis is just beyond the horizon.
I think it's easier for men to come out and say they support it because women have a lot more on the line. You know, if they're mothers, then they have their kids on the line.
So I tried it, and at first, it freaked me out. I had a few panic attacks.
We know that cannabis can prevent Alzheimer's, and if it can reduce all these ailments and keep your stress level low, that adds years to your life before you're even sick.
And so the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate fascist elite SOBs vilified the cannabis plant.
We're all grown up now. We're not in the closet anymore. We don't give a fuck what you think. We smoke marijuana.
But once you just let go with it and just be, it does so many things.
Consciousness opens the doors to perception, expands consciousness, and puts you in a receptive state.
I like to say when I give lectures, I start off by saying I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
Part of what we're doing with Oregon NORML is trying to maximize the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act and try to help the patients that truly need the medicine.
America's ready for a change in the marijuana laws. We're reached critical mass to change this critical mass.
Let's hope we can all live together in peace and harmony, love, and legalize marijuana, for God's sake.
Well, here's a little song that you might get along with, all about a natural seed growing wild by the side of the roadway. It's nature's a wonderful weed. Been around so long, it's hard to tell why anyone would think it's new. Love it or hate it, however you relate it, I'll leave that up to you. But isn't that righteous? And isn't that good enough? Ain't that the way it ought to be? Isn't that righteous? And isn't that good enough? Righteous is good enough for me. History's locked in a cardboard box and it's hard to take a look, with sidetrack frills and fantasies all written all over the book. Everybody tells you what to think and they've got their reasons why. You gotta pick reality up by the scruff of the neck and look it right in the eye. And isn't that righteous? Isn't that good enough? Ain't that the way it ought to be? Isn't that righteous? And isn't that good enough? Righteous is good enough for me. Now the same people that are spreading the fear, the same people that scare me the most. You know, some of them look like they just as soon like they're hanging from a lamppost. They talk about what it does to your brain. Well, I just have to react, cause Hitler never touched this stuff, and that's an actual fact. And isn't that righteous? Isn't that good enough? Ain't that the way it ought to be? Isn't that righteous? And isn't that good enough? Righteous is good enough for me. George Washington was the father of our country, and he had a hemp plantation. Betsy Ross used it to make the flag that flew above the baby nation. They wrote their declarations on paper from that same hemp fiber press, and I don't know what they smoked when they were taking a break, but I got a pretty good guess. And isn't that righteous? Isn't that good enough? Ain't that the way it ought to be? Isn't that righteous? And isn't that good enough? Righteous is good enough for me. Uptight, it just might make you smile. Use a seed oil in your engine, it'll lubricate the miles. glaucoma and chemotherapy. They say it smooths out the track. So next time you meet a cancer patient, ask them what they think about that. Isn't that righteous? Isn't that good enough? Ain't that the way it ought to be? Isn't that righteous? And isn't that good enough? Righteous is good enough for me. I don't know why some people get so upset when you say to legalize it. They'd rather build more jails, arrest more people, and spread more crazy lies. It's like talking to a brick wall. You know, they just don't get the facts. I think they ought to try a little of that Betsy Ross. It just might help them relax. And isn't that righteous? Isn't that good enough? Ain't that the way it ought to be? Isn't that righteous? And isn't that good enough? Righteous is good enough for me. So I'll be on my way now. Guess I've taken just about enough of your time. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like my state of mind, but I got mine and you got yours. We give what we can take. So next time I need a breather, well, I might just take a little smoke break. And isn't that righteous? Isn't that good enough? Ain't that the way it ought to be? Isn't that righteous? Isn't that good enough? Righteous is good enough for me. Isn't that righteous? And isn't that good enough? Ain't that the way it ought to be? Isn't that righteous? And isn't that good enough? Righteous is good enough for me.
Speaking in my official capacity as mayor, I have a message to all of you out there. Welcome to Seattle! You know, it's interesting. During my campaign, somebody asked me what my position was on marijuana legalization. And what I said was that if every politician and elected official who had ever tried marijuana voted to legalize it, it would be legal in an instant. And it's the truth. It is the truth, folks, that we have been, as a society, very hypocritical. And Rick Steves has spoken about this, and your prior speakers have spoken about this. So we live in a very complicated world right now where attitudes are changing. And that makes it harder on lots of folks. It makes it harder on people that want safe access to drugs. It makes it harder, on parents who are trying to figure out what their kids to do, tell their kids what to do. It makes it harder on our police force too, by the way, and I'll talk about that in a second. It makes it harder, but there's a pathway here that'll make it easier. And that pathway is to recognize that prohibition as a strategy has not worked. The war on drugs has not worked. And we can do better. And we're in a time where attitudes are changing. Attitudes are changing, so we just have to keep diligently talking and explaining and being authentic to our friends and neighbor and our family members about this issue. And attitudes do change. And we can see attitudes change for the better. On a number of topics. 20 or 30 years ago, you wouldn't even have spoken about the issue of gay marriage to anyone. And that's changed. 20 or 30 years ago, legalization seemed like something way in the distance. And that's changed. Here in the city of Seattle, by popular vote, we went as far as we could go, which is that enforcement of marijuana laws for small amounts, the possession of small amounts is the lowest enforcement priority for our police. Lowest enforcement priority. But on that, the people led. The people led, and the politicians followed. Now, by the way, just do us a favor. Lowest enforcement priority does not mean legal. Make life easier for everybody, including our police officers. Don't light up in front of them. Just make life easier for everybody, please. Okay? But they take the law seriously. In the state of Washington, the people led again. And medical marijuana is legal under state law. Now those laws have changed, they become more confusing, but the people led. And here in the city of Seattle, we're listening. And we're going to make sure that we do our best to observe that state law, protect the rights of medical marijuana, legitimate medical marijuana users, to safe access to medicine. It's not happening everywhere. It's not happening in every city, but it's happening in our city. Now, the problem is, of course, that our law at the city level, the laws at the state level, all exist in a world where it is still illegal at the federal level. And we can't change that from here with our votes. But we can change more state laws. Both people have spoken to you about initiatives. You know, I mentioned to you two things. The politicians followed because the people led. The initiative here in Seattle to make it the lowest enforcement priority. Medical marijuana. You have to keep leading. You have to keep leading. And I'll do my best as an elected official to lead too. I'll do my best as an elected official to lead too. But we need you to keep leading, because if we do that, we will make these laws make sense. We will make this community better. Thank you all of you for your work. Thank you.
The mayor of the greatest city in the world, Mayor Mike McGinn, show some love, man.
I get a nice little buzz from it.
That buzz comes courtesy of the federal government. An Oregon woman says she's part of a little-known government program that supplies her with free marijuana. Since the mid-1970s, the Compassionate Investigational New Drug Program has been supplying free, legal cannabis to a handful of people. The program officially ended in 1992, but 4 patients still receive pot. Our Christina Nelson sat down with the Eugene woman who is part of that program.
You might call it her morning routine. With her lighter in hand, 72-year-old Elvie Musica gets a cannabis buzz every day, courtesy of the federal government.
It does give you a push. It makes you... The high is nothing but feeling good about things.
This grandmother, who uses cannabis for her glaucoma, is part of a very unique club.
These are the tins that the government sends to the University of Miami, and I have to go there and see my doctor, pick up a prescription.
Since 1988, Musica has been getting more than 3.5 pounds of pot every year from the federal government for free.
And this is what they send me. I call them my green Pall Malls.
She's part of the Compassionate Investigational New Drug Program. It started in 1976 after a man sued the government, claiming only pot helped his glaucoma. The National Institute on Drug Abuse, or NIDA, provided rolled joints for sick people until the first Bush administration halted it in 1992.
But every single one of us had to have reliable doctors that they would count on, extensive medical records. I eventually became the first woman to join the 2 men who were smoking legally at the time.
The program has been closed for almost 20 years, but the FDA still allows the remaining 4 patients, including Musica, to receive the free cannabis.
And I'm just so glad I found this. I really take it in a spirit of Thanksgiving every single day, and I do.
Christina Nelson tells us the marijuana is grown at the University of Mississippi, and then it's taken to Florida, where Musica picks it up every year. She is also an Oregon medical marijuana card holder and receives pot through the state as well.
All of the groups. And the thing to do if you want to get involved is to get involved. Because, you know, those of us who stand up, those of us who are willing to talk truth to power, those of us who go to legislature and say, I'm not a medical marijuana patient, but sometimes I use cannabis to enhance various experiences, sensory experiences. Those of us who are willing to do that can't do that alone. And if there's one thing that's true about our movement today, it's that there's too many chiefs and not enough grassroots. So please, doesn't matter which group you get involved with as far as I'm concerned. There's a row of nonprofits over here behind the stage. Stop by, check it out, get involved.
Woodstock 2010. How you feeling? Bring me up with monitors. Yes, I. Man called Casper from Arizona, Hopi land. How you feeling, Portland? Rhythm, please. This is how we do it in Hopi land. Let the peoples in the house say, yeah! They come by bus, sometimes them a come by but only the best to come around, jump, jump. The children come, they come on back to Hopi land. The children come, they come on back to Hopi land. They come by bus, sometimes them a come by but only the best to come and play down in Hopi land. But tell a friend, a reggae man we bring, Bob and Tamale and my heart is still king. Shock, we shaka, we sing, we sting. Sometimes we DJ BC, sometimes we sing. Back in Hopi land where my guac came from. That slim belly one bit. Just come on from the Kirkhouse movie. Be live and on direct, me coming in on your body. Sure. The children come, they come back to Hopi land. The children come, they come back to Hopi land. They come by bus, sometimes them come by one. Only the best to come around, jump, jump. The children come, they come back to Hopi land. The children come, they come back to Hopi land. They come by bus, sometimes them come by one. Only the best to come and play down in Hopi land. A dedicated cultural connection. The movies up in the dance, yes, the mom. This is the way we call my music, along. A reggae dance, yes, round it in the season. There's no excuse, no better reason. I'm messing up Portland, my only mission. So listen up, no matter why me in the session. We live and on the record, come the boom, boom, come. The children come, they're coming back to Hopi land. The children come, they're coming back to Hopi land. They come by bus, sometimes them I come by, but only the best to come around and down. The children come, they're coming back to Hopi land. The children come, they're coming back to Hopi land. They come by bus, sometimes them I come by, but only the best to come and play down in Hopi land. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm on stand strong. Positive lyrics in the maximum, yeah, yeah, yeah. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And Babylon don't like that, no. Mighty 602 band in the house one time, right? Let me hear you say, hey, yeah! Watch me. You know the dance when everyone once again listen up, no matter what my name I come every time. Mighty 602 when every come every time. The mic, the lyric, that my only weapon. Well, that's the way me try to be, so come have some fun. Mic upon the lyric, man, we only weapon. And when every dance and offer, I'ma listen up, no matter what I come to dance. I get them come, they come about to Hopi land. The children come, they coming about to Hopi land. They come by bus, sometimes them come by, but only the best to come around. The children come, they come about to Hopi land. The children come, they coming about to Hopi land. They come by bus, sometimes they come by, but only the best to come to play down the Hopi land. Yeah, 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 yeah.
This morning on Today's Woman, so-called stiletto stoners, educated, career-minded women who regularly smoke marijuana. The topic is highlighted in a recent article in Marie Claire, and here is one woman's story we should point out that she asked us to disguise her identity.
I am a book editor. I've worked in publishing for several years now. I often smoke pot when I get home from work.
The stereotypical pothead depicted by Hollywood.
This is it, man. This is what your grandchildren are going to be smoking.
The jobless, loveless slacker.
This weed is fantastic.
Is not the only type of person getting stoned. Educated, career-minded, successful women like this 30-something admitted pot smoker are also lighting up.
I look at it as just sort of a way to unwind and just relax and sort of decompress.
According to a recent study, 8 million women in America smoked marijuana in the past year.
For me, it's the equivalent of having a glass of wine at the end of a long day.
An illegal habit she's keeping private.
At my current job, no one knows that I smoke. My family does know. It's obviously not something that they're super happy about, but on the other hand, I have a career.
In 1 month, she'll spend roughly $200 or $300 for approximately half an ounce. And even though it's against the law, she's neither worried about getting caught nor becoming addicted.
I don't walk down the sidewalk blazing joints. I don't sit in the park next to moms with kids and smoke. I'm not worried about addiction. I feel like I'm more addicted to coffee than anything else. And I'm sure millions of people can say the same.
The changing face of pot smokers.
But you're so smart and so together and so organized and you're always on time. And I'm like, yes, I am all of those things and I do smoke pot. It's not impossible.
Joanna Coles is the editor-in-chief of Marie Claire. Dr. Julie Holland is a psychiatrist at the New York University School of Medicine and the author of Weekends at Bellevue, 9 years on the night shift at the Psych ER. Good morning to both of you. Nice to see you.
Good
How
morning.
did this hit your radar?
Well, really, we were hearing from a lot of readers that they were feeling very stressed. I mean, clearly the economy is a great source of stress for people, and they wanted a way to unwind. And they found more and more of them were doing this, and they found it had less impact on them when they were going to work the next morning. So they didn't want to drink. It's cheap. And they felt they could do it in the privacy of their own home, and it was a very effective way to come down.
That 8 million number we quoted in the piece, that does not include teenagers who are experimenting with marijuana. You're talking about the 18 to 49-year-olds.
We're talking about highly functioning women who, you know, these are not people who are lying on park benches, the typical picture of someone who's addicted to drugs. They're casual recreational users who find it very effective.
This comment that we just heard in the piece where it's just, I use it instead of having a glass of wine after work. How do you feel about that? Is it the same thing, other than the fact that it's illegal?
Well, the fact that it's illegal is a very big deal. You know, people have to hide and they feel like criminals, and there's a lot of shame and guilt. It ends up making, it decreases self-esteem a little bit, and it makes it more adrenalized. You know, the fact that you add adrenaline into it, that you have to hide and there's shame, actually can make it feel more addictive. It can make it more dangerous.
I have to say that's not what we're hearing from readers. I mean, first of all, it's decriminalized in 13 states, and I don't think this is a generation of people who get excited about the fact it's illegal. I think they tried it in college and they're going back to something because these are times of real stress, and I don't think they're excited by the fact it's illegal, and honestly it's not very difficult to get. That's the other thing.
Right, well,
we would talk to people who had dealers in their offices.
One woman in your piece said that it's like her bubble bath.
Right.
When you make comments like that, and I think what I was getting at with you, Doctor, when you say equate it to a glass of wine, are you ignoring a darker side of this issue?
Well, it is a drug, like alcohol is a drug, or like coffee, caffeine, cigarettes. So it's very different than alcohol. It's more of a mind drug. I feel alcohol is sort of a deadening, numbing, maybe more like a body drug. So people are unwinding and they're relaxing, but they're also able to think and maybe analyze or think clearly, pull back and see the macro, maybe make some changes in their lives. I think that cannabis really is more of a psychotherapeutic drug. It could actually be more helpful than alcohol, certainly in terms of insomnia or depression, anxiety. it can potentially be a treatment or a medicine.
And Joanna, post-publication of this article, is the feedback from the viewers changing at all?
Well, the feedback from our readers is really that they're very pleased, that they recognise themselves. I mean, it's not a piece condoning it. It's a piece saying, look, this is going on. How do we feel about it? And a lot of people have written in saying, you know what, I do this too, and I'm really glad you've shone a light on it because I need to know other people are doing it.
That's absolutely what I'm hearing. And I think the behavior probably needs to be normalized. I think, you know, the countries that are regulated, they've got less use, not more.
All right, Doctor, Joanna, thanks very much.
Well, you inspired so many people with your book, which, you know, is, you know, you had a book first on rating cannabis, right?
Yes.
And that was like a judging
2 years
cannabis
before High Times.
2 years before High Times, like 1970 or so, or
73.
73. Okay, and then when I first met you, there was I'd seen an article in the Yippie newspaper, Overthrow, called the CMI White Paper, and that was kind of about 3 pages long and laid out kind of the gist of what was the outline of your future book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes.
And it was, what's his name, the guy from New York.
Dana Beale.
Yes, he took them for himself. He said, oh, that's so wonderful information. I should have it. And
put it in Overthrow? Is that how that got published there?
And I got really bad.
You got mad at Dana for that? Well,
I don't blame you, Jack. You deserved it.
Few people did. I know that then in '85 you wrote the first edition of your book right here in Portland, in River City. And it was, for a while, it was the CMI OMI White Paper, the California Marijuana Initiative, the Oregon Marijuana Initiative. And the first few editions were like newsprint editions.
No.
They were handed out, right?
The first edition and the second edition were 110-page book. And the third and fourth edition have got 90,000 copies for the
campaign for the Oregon Marijuana Initiative in '86.
And that was a newspaper.
Yeah, yeah. I remember every neighborhood they handed those out in. I think OMI won it.
Yes.
That was one of the...
it only won 15 cities.
And what do they call it? Precincts. Yeah, yes. 15 precincts. And those were the ones.
And those were it's handed out twice. And 3 times and 4 times it got handed out because the guys, 90,000 people, and about 30,000 of them got once, twice, 3 times, and 4 times. We won those by 60 or 70%.
Right. So, how many copies have been sold now, and how many languages is your book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, printed in? I know it was the #1 seller in Germany,
about
too.
100 magazines. And it's in about 750,000 copies in the United States, and about 500 or 600,000 copies overseas.
A lot of them in Germany.
And then there is about 10 or 15 companies, Japan, Korea, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Russia.
So it's in all these different languages.
Yes, but they don't pay me.
Well, I guess your copyright's only as good as your ability to enforce it.
And the question of cannabis is the most vivid illustration of how this government has overstepped its bounds in policing the private behavior of citizens. When they told us we couldn't plant a hemp seed in the ground, they severed us from the natural cycle. That is what they seek to do. I call it the synthetic subversion, where they want to replace all the natural products on earth that used to be grown out of God's earth and God's seed, and replace them with synthetic products and knocked our farmer out of the agrarian society and the agrarian market and made the ghost towns of our small cities and villages across this country. We need to rediscover a cash crop, one that will allow our farmers to go back to the land, one that will allow our farmers to compete with the petrochemical pipelines. You plant U.S. 7% agricultural land in hemp, you will have to import another drop of oil. We can replace the spills in the Gulf. We can replace the environmental catastrophe that the petroleum pipelines have cast upon Mother Earth, and instead let our farmers grow hemp as a fuel crop. In 1991, Willie Nelson and I poured hemp oil into my Mercedes diesel and drove it across Kentucky in my bid for governor. That's why he started his biofuel plant. Listen, folks, you all have been handed a torch. Jack Hare, bless his soul, passed away. I'm getting old up here. You know, we cannot carry this ball much longer. You have to become educated. You have to learn the truth. You have to reach out there and grab the responsibility of maintaining your freedom. Every generation must rewin its own freedoms. And those very sacrifices, right up to the very last second I've been talking to you, made on your behalf, cannot continue anymore. What really counts is your all's commitment to what sacrifices you're willing to make in the future to maintain your freedom. And it's right there in front of you. I encourage you to learn the law. I encourage you to learn the political process. I encourage you to reach out there and take responsibility of your own freedom. Live your life like a warrior. God bless you all. Thanks for having me out here in Seattle.
Well, and whatever's going on in this dimensional reality, we'll never outfight them. It's about outthinking them. It's about outthinking them. Just think about that, right? About outthinking them. Alternative energy, power, alternative energy, conscious live thought, the process of thinking, energy. We are the alternative energy that can make the change to happen. But we really have to understand what this means. We really have to get it and understand it, then we become that power. The power of the people doesn't have shit to do with the vote or any other thing. It's got to do with thinking with a clear, coherent, intelligent mind. Use the intelligence clearly and coherently. How much power do we have? Can you make yourself feel miserable with your fears and your doubts and your insecurities? If you can do that, you have power. Simply put. Alright? So it's just a matter, but that's power used incoherently and chaotically. So just think of some mental shifts here and use that power clearly and coherently and real change. This is the power of the people. Like this Cannabis Tax Act, you vote, but the voting is like using it as a tool. You know, you just use it as a tool, but your power isn't there. Your power isn't here.
Let's put this petition on the ballot. We got 40,000 signatures now, and we need 87,000. We still got to gather more. So help us put this on the ballot. Thanks for watching. We're going to jump out and end with the music of John Cornette and Jan Sue, and help us restore hemp. Good night.